Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I am Dr. Amna Sajid and today we are going to discuss homopolysaccharides. So these are the learning objectives for the lecture. First of all, we are going to discuss what is meant by polysaccharides and homopolysaccharides. As you might recall, polysaccharides are polymers of simple sugars comprising of more than 10 monosaccharide subunits. So these polysaccharides are the most complex form of carbohydrates. And what are they? They are made up of repeating monosaccharide subunits, and there are more than 10 repeating monosaccharide subunits in case of polysaccharides. If it is less than 10, then we will call them oligosaccharides, not polysaccharides. So these polysaccharides can be further divided into homopolysaccharides and heteropolysaccharides, and today's lecture will focus on just homopolysaccharides. And what is meant by homopolysaccharides? Homopolysaccharides are polymers of simple sugars which are composed of only one type of sugar monomer. So whenever these homopolysaccharides will be completely hydrolyzed, they will yield just one type of uh, monosaccharide. That is why they are known as homopolysaccharides. So these are some examples of commonly known homopolysaccharides, and those homopolysaccharides which are composed of glucose subunits, we call them glucosans, and examples are starch, glycogen, cellulose, dextran, etc. And those polysaccharides which are made up of fructose subunits, they are termed as fructosans, and an example is inulin. And galactosans are those homopolysaccharides which are composed of galactose subunits such as agar. So first of all, we are going to discuss glucosans, and the first example is starch. And you have already studied the biomedical importance of starch, and you must be knowing that starch is the storage form of glucose in plants. And inside plants, it is found in all the parts such as leaves, stem, roots, fruits, and seeds. And starch inside the plant cells are stored in the form of granules, and these granules may vary in size and shape depending upon the plant that you are dealing with. So, as starch is present in a variety of plants, therefore, it is an important source of nutrition for humans. And why it is important source of nutrition? Because it is present in a wide variety of plants. Plus, it can be hydrolyzed completely inside our body to yield glucose, and then glucose can be used for energy producing purposes. Okay, so we have discussed the biomedical importance of starch. Now we are going to focus on the structure of starch. So what is starch? We know that it is a homopolysaccharide made up of glucose subunits, and these glucose subunits are combined or joined together in a starch molecule by means of glycosidic bonds. So we have determined that starch is a polysaccharide made up of glucose subunits, but it is basically a mixture of two components or two polysaccharides. One is known as amylose and the other one is known as amylopectin. So both amylose and amylopectin are polymers made up of D-glucose subunits, and they are present in a mixture form in starch. So starch is not made up of just one component, it is basically a collection or a mixture of two components. One is called amylose and the other one is called amylopectin. So both are polymers and both are made up of D-glucose subunits. So what is the main difference between them? The main difference between them is that amylose is a straight chain polymer. There are no branches present in the structure of amylose, whereas in case of amylopectin, branches are present in the structure of this polysaccharide. So amylose is unbranched, whereas amylopectin is the branched component of starch. Another major difference between them is that amylose has a lower molecular weight as compared to amylopectin, which has a higher molecular weight than amylose. Secondly, in starch, amylose content is lower than that of amylopectin. Amylopectin is present in greater quantities in starch. So first of all, we will see the structure of amylose. As you can see, amylose is a linear polymer. There are no branches present in the structure of polymer. Instead, it is made up of glucose, D-glucose subunits that are joined together in the form of a straight chain. And the type of linkage between two adjacent monomers is alpha 1,4 linkage. Why it is called alpha and why it is called 1,4 glycosidic bond? Because carbon number 1 of one monomer is forming a bond with carbon number 4 of the adjacent monomer. And in glycosidic bond, the groups that are basically participating in the bond formation are the hydroxyl groups. And if both the hydroxyl groups are present below the surface of the are present below the plane of the ring, then the type of bond is known as alpha glycosidic bond. So in carbon number 1 of this monomer, its hydroxyl group is also was also located beneath the plane of the ring, and the hydroxyl group of carbon number 4, it was also present below the plane of the ring. So the bond formed between these two adjacent monomers is known as alpha glycosidic bond. And what type of glycosidic? Alpha 1,4 glycosidic bond. So in amylose, the adjacent D-glucose subunits are being linked together by means of alpha 1,4 glycosidic bond. And this is a very important point that you need to remember. So now we are going to see the structure of amylopectin. Amylopectin, as you can see, is a branched polymer of D-glucose subunits. This is the straight chain, and the adjacent glucose subunits are being linked by the same type of bond that we saw in case of amylose, alpha 1,4 glycosidic bond. But at branch points, the type of bond is alpha 1,6, because at branch point, carbon number 6 of this glucose monomer is being linked to carbon number 1 of the first monomer at the branch. So the type of linkage is not alpha 1,4. Instead, at branch points, the type of linkage is alpha 1,6. And in this case, the hydroxyl group is present below the plane of the ring. That is why the type of glycosidic bond is alpha. If it was present above the plane of the ring, then we would have called it beta 1,6 glycosidic bond, but that is not the case in amylopectin. At branch points, the type of linkage is alpha 1,6 glycosidic bond. And this is very important. You need to remember the type of linkages that are present between the individual subunits in case of polymers. In amylose, the type of linkage was alpha 1,4 glycosidic linkage, but in amylopectin, in a straight chain, the glycosidic bond is alpha 1,4 glycosidic bond, but at branch points, the type of bond present is alpha 1,6 glycosidic bond. And another point to remember about the structure of amylopectin is that the branch points are present after every 24 to 30 glucose units. So we will get a straight chain comprising of 34 to 30 glucose subunits, and after that we will get a branch point exactly like this. So this slide shows the major differences between amylose and amylopectin. As we have discussed earlier, both amylose and amylopectin are polymers of D-glucose subunits. But amylose is a straight chain polymer, whereas amylopectin is a branched polymer of D-glucose. The content of amylose in starch is lesser than that of amylopectin. Amylose content ranges between 15 to 20%, whereas amylopectin content in starch ranges between 80 to 85%. Again, amylose has a straight chain structure, whereas amylopectin has a branched structure. The type of linkages present in amylose are alpha 1,4 glycosidic linkages, whereas there are two type of bonds present in amylopectin. In the straight chain configuration, the type of bonds are alpha 1,4 glycosidic bonds, whereas at branch points the type of bonds are alpha 1,6 glycosidic linkages. Amylose is soluble in water, whereas amylopectin is insoluble in water. In uh, fact, amylopectin takes up water and it swells up, but it is insoluble in water. Amylose gives a dark blue or blackish color when iodine solution is added to it, whereas amylopectin gives a reddish brown color with iodine. So these are the major properties of starch. These are quite simple. Please give them a read, and if you have any query, you can ask me. So this is one property of starch that I would like to discuss in detail because it has nutritional implications for humans. So starch can be hydrolyzed by the action of acids or enzymes such as amylase and maltase enzymes, which are present inside our body. And the complete hydrolysis of starch yields glucose, which can be used for energy production. And on partial hydrolysis or during the process of breakdown of starch, starch yields a number of lower molecular weight products known as dextrins and maltose. So dextrins are lower molecular weight polymers of D-glucose subunits, and the D-glucose subunits in dextrins are joined together by means of alpha 1,4 or alpha 1,6 glycosidic bonds. And maltose is basically a disaccharide comprising of two D-glucose subunits joined together via alpha 1,4 glycosidic bonds. So dextrins and maltose are produced inside our body during the breakdown of starch. Now we move on to glycogen. Now glycogen is another homopolysaccharide comprising of D-glucose subunits, and it is the storage form of glucose in animals. That is why it is also known as animal starch, because in plants the storage form of glucose is known as starch. Therefore glycogen, which is the storage form of glucose in animals, it is also referred to as animal starch. And this glycogen is also found in yeast and fungi. So glycogen is also a polymer of D-glucose subunits, and it is a branched polymer of D-glucose subunits, and its structure resembles that of amylopectin. As you can see, this is glycogen. It is a highly branched homopolysaccharide comprising of D-glucose subunits. And as you can see, this is a straight chain and this is a branch point from which a branch is emerging. So similarly, as in amylopectin, in the straight chain configuration, the two adjacent uh, D-glucose monomers are being linked together by alpha 1,4 glycosidic bond, whereas at branch point this is carbon number 6 and this is carbon number 1 of the adjacent monomer. So at branch point alpha 1,6 glycosidic linkage is present, and this is the same as in case of amylopectin. So glycogen structure is similar to that of amylopectin, but what is the difference between glycogen structure and amylopectin structure? The difference is that glycogen is more branched than amylopectin. So greater number of branches or branch points are present in glycogen as compared to amylopectin. So this slide again shows the structure of glycogen. As you can see in the straight chain configuration, The type of bond present is alpha 1,4 glycosidic bond because carbon number 1 and carbon number 4 of adjacent monomers are taking part in the bond formation, and both the hydroxyl groups are located beneath or below the plane of the rings. That is why the type of bond is alpha glycosidic bond. And this is a branch point, and at branch points the type of bond is alpha 1,6 glycosidic bond because carbon number 6 of this subunit and carbon number 1 of this subunit, they are taking part in the bond formation at branch point. So the type of linkage is alpha 1,6 glycosidic linkage. And another point to remember is that branch points in case of glycogen are present after every 12 to 18 glucose residues. That is why glycogen has more branches as compared to amylopectin. Uh, you might recall that in amylopectin the branch points were present after every 24 to 30 glucose subunits, but in case of glycogen branches are present after every 12 to 18 glucose subunits. So glycogen has a similar structure to amylopectin. The only difference is that glycogen is more branched as compared to amylopectin. So these are some of the main properties of glycogen. Again, give them a read. If you have any problem, contact me. Okay, so what is the biomedical importance of glycogen? The two major organs in higher animals which store glycogen are liver and muscle. In addition, glycogen is also stored in other organs such as brain and kidneys, but they are mainly stored inside liver and muscle. And glycogenolysis or glycogen breakdown in liver serves to maintain plasma glucose levels in case of hypoglycemia, whereas glycogenolysis in muscles serves to provide energy to the muscles during strenuous exercise. So this is the significance of glycogen for us. In case of hypoglycemia, when the levels of plasma glucose are below the normal level, glycogen breakdown occurs inside the liver and glycogen is completely broken down into glucose, and this glucose then enters the bloodstream and serves to maintain the plasma glucose levels. And in this way, glucose availability to different tissues in the body, especially the brain, is maintained. Whereas glycogenolysis in muscles or glycogen breakdown in muscles serves only to provide energy to the muscles, because glycogen inside the muscles does not completely break down into glucose. In fact, glycogen breakdown in muscles yields glucose 6 phosphate, and this glucose 6 phosphate cannot be further converted into glucose because of the absence of enzyme glucose 6 phosphatase. Glucose 6 phosphatase enzyme can convert glucose 6 phosphate into glucose, but that enzyme is absent in muscles, because of which glycogen breakdown yields only glucose 6 phosphate, and that glucose 6 phosphate can enter the glycolytic pathway and produce energy, and that energy is utilized by the muscles in case of requirement according to the demand of the muscles, for example during strenuous exercise. So I'm going to repeat once again. Inside the liver, glycogen can be broken down completely into glucose, and this glucose can serve to maintain plasma glucose levels whenever there is a need in the body, for example in case of hypoglycemia. Whereas in muscles, glycogen breakdown does not yield glucose. Instead, it yields glucose 6 phosphate, which cannot be further converted into glucose inside the muscles because muscles lack an enzyme glucose 6 phosphatase. And glucose 6 phosphatase is responsible for converting glucose 6 phosphate into glucose. So, when this enzyme is absent, the glucose 6 phosphate cannot be converted to glucose. Instead, this glucose 6 phosphate enters the glycolytic pathway inside the muscle cells, and as a result of glycolysis, energy is produced, and that energy is provided to the muscles during the time of need, for example during strenuous exercise. So this again shows the same concept. Whenever there is hypoglycemia, the glycogen stores inside the liver, they start breaking down, and glycogen breakdown inside the liver yields glucose, because inside the liver glucose 6 phosphatase enzyme is present, which is responsible for converting glucose 6 phosphate into glucose, and this glucose can then enter the bloodstream and maintain plasma glucose levels. So hypoglycemia activates glycogen breakdown inside the liver, and glycogen breakdown inside the liver yields glucose, and this glucose can serve to maintain plasma glucose levels. But what happens in case of muscle? Whenever the muscles are doing strenuous exercise, or they are doing extra work, this stimulates glycogen breakdown inside the muscles, but glycogen breakdown inside the muscles yields glucose 6 phosphate, and this glucose 6 phosphate cannot be converted into glucose inside the muscles because of the absence of this phosphatase enzyme. So what happens in muscles? Glucose 6 phosphate enters the glycolytic pathway, and the result of this glycolytic pathway, ATP or energy is produced, and this energy is utilized by the exercising muscles. So in case of liver glycogenolysis, blood glucose levels are maintained because glucose enters the bloodstream from liver, whereas glycogenolysis in muscle cells serves to provide energy to the muscles. So now we are going to discuss another homopolysaccharide composed of D-glucose subunits, and it is known as cellulose. Now cellulose is one of the most abundant organic polymers on earth, and it is a very important structural polysaccharide present in plants. So cellulose is a homopolysaccharide of plant origin, and which type of polysaccharide it is? It is a structural homopolysaccharide. It is a part of the primary cell wall of green plants, and industrially it is used for production of paperboard, paper, cotton, linen and other plant fibers. So we are using cellulose in a lot of ways in our life. So now we are going to discuss the major structural properties of cellulose. Now cellulose, we have discussed before, it is a homopolysaccharide comprising of D-glucose subunits, and it is an unbranched straight chain polymer. So it contains no branches in its structure, and the type of glycosidic linkages present between adjacent D-glucose subunits are beta 1,4 glycosidic linkages. And what is meant by beta 1,4 glycosidic linkages, we will see in the upcoming slides. And another point to remember about the structure of cellulose is that cellulose polymers or cellulose molecules or chains, they arrange themselves in the form of fibrils, and these different cellulose chains, they are held together inside the fibrils by means of hydrogen bonds. We will discuss this later with the help of a figure as well. So first of all, we are going to see the type of linkage present in the structure of cellulose. So this is one molecule of D-glucose, and this is another molecule of D-glucose. This is carbon number 1 of this subunit, and this is carbon number 4 of this subunit. And the type of bond is 1,4 glycosidic bond, but this is not alpha linkage, this is beta linkage. Why? Because one of the hydroxyl groups that is taking part in bond formation, it is present above the plane of this ring structure, and the other hydroxyl group which is participating in the bond formation, it is present below the plane of this ring. So one is above and one is below, and the bond formed is in a zigzag type pattern. So this type of glycosidic linkage is known as beta glycosidic linkage. And what type specifically? Beta 1 4 glycosidic linkage. So in cellulose, straight chains are present and the adjacent D-glucose subunits are joined together by means of beta 1,4 glycosidic linkage. So this again shows the arrangement of cellulose chains inside microfibrils and fibrils. As you can see, this is the cell wall of green plants, and inside this cell wall fibrils are present, and again inside these fibrils microfibrils are present. And if you study these microfibrils under a microscope, you can see that these microfibrils are composed of cellulose chains which are held together by means of hydrogen bonds. And this association of different cellulose chains by means of hydrogen bonds, it gives strength and structural stability to the structure or to the cell wall of plants. So now we are going to discuss the breakdown of cellulose. Now cellulose can be hydrolyzed or broken down by the enzyme known as cellulase, because cellulase is able to hydrolyze the beta 1,4 linkages. But this cellulase enzyme is not present in the alimentary system of humans. So we lack the enzyme cellulase which is able to digest or break down cellulose. And cellulose, as you know, is present in a variety of foods of plant origin. So we are consuming cellulose in significant quantities in our diet, but this cellulose cannot be digested in our gastrointestinal system. So what happens to this cellulose? This cellulose remains in the alimentary tract as such, and it absorbs or takes up water and swells up, and this adds bulk to the stools and activates peristaltic movements in the intestine. So cellulose, the dietary cellulose, it is a very important fiber in our diet, and it serves to add bulk to the stools and also activates peristaltic movements inside the intestines, which helps in propulsion of stool along the intestinal tract. Now we are going to discuss another homopolysaccharide comprising of glucose subunits, and it is known as dextran. Now dextran is a high molecular weight branched polymer of glucose prepared from natural sources of glucose. So we obtain dextran from natural sources of glucose, and it has a very complex structure because it is made up of a collection of chains of varying lengths. And the main type of glycosidic bond found between the glucose subunits is alpha 1,6 glycosidic linkage, and at branch points alpha 1,3 linkage is found. And why dextran is important for us? Because it can be used as a plasma volume expander in case of hypovolemia. So whenever hypovolemia, severe hypovolemia occurs due to any reason, for example, after bleeding due to major trauma or injury, after major surgery, or fluid loss following severe burns, in such cases dextran can be used to restore blood volume. And dextran remains in the body for a considerable amount of time because it is broken down very slowly. So this makes dextran very useful as a plasma volume expander in case of hypovolemia. Now we are going to discuss another polysaccharide known as chitin. You can also pronounce it as chitin, but I am going to pronounce it as chitin. So chitin is a fibrous structural homopolysaccharide found in the cell wall of fungi, exoskeleton of arthropods such as insects, and scales of fish. So chitin performs structural functions in fungi, insects, and fish. And it is a straight chain polymer composed of N-acetyl glucosamine, which is a derivative of glucose, and these N-acetylglucosamine molecules are linked together by beta 1,4 glycosidic bonds inside the structure of chitin. And N-acetylglucosamine is found by replacing one of the hydroxyl groups of glucose by acetylamine group. So if we replace one of the hydroxyl groups at carbon number 2 of glucose, then with acetylamine group, then the resultant structure would be N-acetylglucosamine. And this replacement of hydroxyl group by acetylamine group allows for more extensive hydrogen bonding, and this gives a lot of strength to the structure of chitin. So this diagram shows the structure of chitin. As you can see, this is one molecule of N-acetylglucosamine and this is another molecule of N-acetylglucosamine, and this structure is very much similar to glucose. The only difference is that at carbon number 2, this is carbon number 1 and this is carbon number 2. So at carbon number 2, the hydroxyl group is replaced by this acetylamine group, and because of the replacement of hydroxyl group of glucose by this acetylamine group, the resultant structure is known as N-acetylglucosamine. So this is one molecule of N-acetylglucosamine and this is another molecule of N-acetylglucosamine, and these two adjacent molecules are linked together by beta 1,4 glycosidic linkage. Why? Because this is carbon number 1 and this is carbon number 4, which are participating in bond formation, and one of the hydroxyl groups at this carbon, it is present above the plane of the ring, and the other hydroxyl group is present below the plane of the ring, so the resultant bond is zigzag shaped. That is why it is known as beta glycosidic bond. And which type of beta glycosidic bond? Beta 1,4 glycosidic bond. So chitin is a straight chain polymer, and the bond present between the adjacent N-acetylglucosamine molecules is beta 1,4 glycosidic bond. And the presence of this acetylamine group, it serves to form more extensive hydrogen bonds among the chains of chitin, and this gives a lot of strength to the structure of chitin. So now we are going to discuss another homopolysaccharide known as inulin, and inulin belongs to a group of polysaccharides called fructans because it comprises of fructose molecules. So it is a polymer of fructose. So inulin is a naturally occurring storage carbohydrate present in a wide variety of plants such as wheat, bananas, onions, garlic, asparagus, chicory, etc. And industrially it is obtained from the root of a plant known as chicory. So inulin is a polymer of fructose, and it is basically a heterogeneous collection of fructose polymers. And why do we call it a heterogeneous collection of fructose polymers? Because basically it is a mixture comprising of fructose polymers of varying lengths. So it is not made up of a uniform component. Instead, it is made up of a mixture or collection of fructose polymers of varying lengths. And the fructose subunits or molecules present inside the inulin chains, they are linked together by beta 2,1 glycosidic bonds. So this is the structure of inulin. First of all, I would like to mention that the inulin chains, they terminate at glucose residues. So at the end of each inulin chain, one glucose residue is present while the rest of the chain is made up of fructose subunits. This is why we call it a homopolysaccharide of fructose, because the majority of the chain, the main part of the chain is made up of fructose subunits, whereas only at the termination point one glucose residue is present. So the fructose molecules or the fructose subunits, they are linked together by beta 2,1 glycosidic linkage. Why? First of all, I would like to mention that this is one fructose subunit and this is another fructose subunit, and as you can see that fructose forms a 5-membered ring structure, unlike glucose which forms a 6-membered ring structure. So this is one fructose molecule and this is another fructose molecule. This is carbon number 1, this is carbon number 2, carbon number 3, carbon number 4, 5 and carbon number 6. Similarly, this is carbon number 1, carbon number 2, carbon number 3, carbon number 4, carbon number 5 and carbon number 6. So these are two fructose adjacent fructose subunits, and the bond formed between them is beta 2,1, because carbon number 2 of this fructose molecule and carbon number 1 of this fructose molecule, they are participating in bond formation. So it is 2,1 glycosidic linkage. And which type of glycosidic linkage? Beta glycosidic linkage, because hydroxyl group of this carbon is present below the plane of the ring, and this the hydroxyl group of this carbon is present above the plane of the ring. So one hydroxyl group is present above the plane of the ring while the other one is below the plane of the ring. So this type of glycosidic linkage is known as beta glycosidic linkage, and in inulin beta 2,1 glycosidic linkage is formed. So what is the importance of inulin in our life? First of all, inulin is being used as a food additive in case of a variety of foods. And why it is a very useful food additive? First of all, because it acts as a dietary fiber, because it cannot be uh, broken down in our GIT, in our gastrointestinal tract. So it has dietary fiber properties, and because it cannot be digested, its caloric value is very low. So it is being used as a food additive in case of a variety of foods, and in some foods such as ice creams and yogurts, it is even being used as a substitute for fat, as a low caloric substitute for fat. And another and perhaps the most important use of inulin is because it is used to measure glomerular filtration rate or GFR, and GFR is an indicator of kidney function. So by using GFR value, we can assess whether the kidney function is normal or not, or whether the kidneys are functioning to their maximal potential or not. You will study about GFR later in while you will be studying renal module. uh, so right now this much information is sufficient for you. You just have to remember that inulin can be used to measure GFR, and GFR is an indicator of kidney function, or in other words, by making use of GFR value, we can determine whether the kidneys are functioning normally or not. Now we are going to discuss agar, which is a polymer of galactose. Agar is found in the cell wall of certain species of algae, and industrially it is obtained from seaweed, which is also a type of algae. And structurally, agar is a mixture of linear polysaccharide agarose and a collection of smaller molecules known as agaropectin. And agar is important for us because it can be used as a laxative, because it cannot be broken down in our digestive system. Therefore it adds it bulk to the stools and activates peristaltic movements inside the intestine. Therefore it is being used as a laxative. Another important use of agar is that in agar, Agarose is separated from agaropectin, and this agarose in its pure form or purified form, it is dissolved in water and then cooled to form a gel, and this gel is then used in agar plates, and these agar plates are used in microbiology for culture of different bacteria or for the growth of different bacteria inside labs. And you will learn hopefully more about agar plates when you will be studying microbiology, but this is a very important function of agar and you should be knowing about it. So this was all about the commonly known homopolysaccharides. If you have any query, you can mail me. Thank you and best of luck from my side.